Carl, I'm really excited about talking to you today. Obviously, we met in Vegas at the Bureau event, which was the first time I'd seen you in action in front of your tribe. And I was so impressed that I would really wanted to get you on the show. So, big warm welcome to you. And I'm just going to tell the audience who you are for those of them. I
Oh,
mean, so many audience members will know exactly who you are. But let's, for those who don't,
I have been
Carl.
told who I am many times to my face. So I'm looking forward to this.
All right. So, for those of you who don't know Carl, Carl Smith leads the Bureau, a community that connects and supports agency leaders. A former theatre major, he ran his agency nGen Works for 12 years, experimenting with unconventional management. After attending a Bureau event in 2012, he saw the power of community, and so he took over in 2016. And now Carl heads up the Bureau and leads and leads everyone to navigate the changes and challenges of running an agency, which is non-stop, as we know.
Oh,
Everything, it's like whack-a-mole, isn't it? So he ensures that everyone feels connected, no one feels alone. And through everything that they do at the Bureau, there's Slack, there's events, collaborative programs, and the Bureau really fosters the real life connections and growth. So, and also when he's not building community, he's running, recording, and speaking about leading humans. So, Carl, welcome.
thank you so much. And that was amazing. I am totally showing this to my mom.
Please do, because I asked the question to give your mum on LinkedIn. So I hope that she remembers me. So Carl, I'm really keen to tap into your knowledge. You're talking to agency owners all the time, and obviously this is very topical at the moment. Lots going on in the world. So, but before we get into the kind of deep dive questions, you describe yourself as a recovering founder with zero successful exits. Can you talk about how those experiences have shaped your view of what agency leaders need?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say I put that up in my bio probably about 8 months ago. And it was reactionary because there's so many people out there beating their chests saying they've had all these successful exits and all this stuff. And I think it's BS. I mean, there are some who have, and I'm sure I have, like my ego doesn't want those people to be better than me or whatever's going on. But I think people need to know that you can be successful. You can be a good leader. You can be creative and have fun and help others without some big payday. It would be nice, but I think when people focus on that, it becomes the problem.
You are talking to agency owners all the time. What do they say about exits? What's the consensus?
I will first say there is no consensus.
Right. Okay.
You have a group that I call never sells. These are the never sells. I would not sell my shop no matter what. They don't know what no matter what is. It could be you have a family member who gets really ill, and the only way to take care of them is to sell the company that you built. So I think anybody who has some grand, overarching, like unilateral belief is a little in trouble. I think you can't, but I do think you should operate that way. Operate like you want to stay, but plan like you're going to sell, because that's the best way to run your company anyway. The thing for me with most owners though is why. Why do you want to sell? Are you just tired?
Yeah.
Have you just had enough and you're like, this has to be worth something? Because more than likely, that's horrible time to sell, right? It's like you can't do that. If it is, I've gotten to this point and I'm excited about other things, and this no longer serves me, then yeah, that's a great opportunity to sell because you're not running away from something, you're running towards something. I did have one opportunity to exit. It was my unsuccessful exit. And the reason was I wanted out. It had nothing to do with even money, but it was just, I wasn't in love with the company I started anymore. I was in love with the bureau now. And I'm a very monogamous kind of guy. So it was like, I can only focus on one of these. So for me, when I tried, I almost got taken. There are people out there who are going to say what you want to hear. And you just have to be really careful. Unless your mindset is, I'm going towards something, then at that point, I think you're okay.
Tell us a bit about the Bureau. What kind of agency owner is typically attracted to the Bureau? Is it every shape, every type of agency? Is it every size? You know, like who would you say is your ICP?
It's so funny. I got asked that 3 times in the past 3 days, this being the third.
Really?
No, but I think it's great because I've never thought about it. I don't think about a customer, I think about a human. So for me, it's the perfect human to come in is smart and caring and empathetic and struggling and has had enough success that they can share and help, but is up against the wall enough that they'll let others help them and support them. If you look at it more on the business side, it's like the core is 10 to 50 full-time employees. They've been in business probably a decade plus, and they have a very, very strong culture. They want their people to do better, so they want to do better, and they find the Bureau is a place that can help them accomplish that.
I love that you've explained sort of the values and the culture of the Bureau, because that's certainly what came across to me when I met you for the first time in real life in Vegas, because there was a real cohesiveness to the group and a lot of it just seemed support and love. And I think that's why you rebranded that particular event. Is that right?
Yeah, it was Leadership Live, and afterwards, and first of all, thank you so much. You were such a huge part of its success. Afterwards, some members came to me and said, we want to change the name to Leadership Love. And I said, okay, get a petition going. And so they did. And there were about 30 people who attended that signed and said it should be called Leadership Love because that's what this was. I fell back in love with being a leader, and I was not. I had just fallen into sadness and complacency.
Okay, so we'll talk about the Bureau a lot more because I'm sure people listening that aren't part of it might be interested now. You're having all these conversations with agency owners. We're recording this in April 2025. What are sort of 3 to 5 of the most pressing challenges that are being discussed by agency owners right now?
Yeah, I would say the first is just overall uncertainty. The market is just really, really volatile, and that means that it's a cash flow problem too. So, on top of that, I would say they haven't felt comfortable since 2020, where occasionally they think they're on top of the world, but it's because of subsidies. And then they feel like everything's falling apart, but it's because everybody's in a talent war. And then they feel like they got it back together, but it was just kind of back to where we were. So it's like there's this craziness where it used to be like every 3 to 5 years you'd have a cycle. It feels like every 6 months to 9 months you have a cycle now. And that's just absolutely exhausting for them. I would say there's a lot of confusion over AI. That's another one. There are, and I can go way deep on this, there are shops who are doing really well, and I think it's because they're curious and they're positive and they have just enough reality distortion in their goggles that they can just ignore the fact that the world's on fire and push forward. The ones who aren't, they're struggling to understand, is AI for what I'm creating? Is AI for how I'm running my shop? Is AI, can it help me with culture? So they're looking at a holistic approach. Sometimes they don't know where to start. So that's also huge. But then the last one is mental health. It's not just burnout. Some people are getting seriously depressed. Some people have built something and they care about their team so much. And so the ability just to have people to commiserate with, sometimes it's just having somebody to hold you and say it's going to be okay, right? Or you both know it might not be, but the fact that you're not alone, I think that is one of the huge parts of it. It's like You're not the only one going through this. You are not horrible at your job. What you're doing is impossible right now. So just look around and realize you're not alone. It doesn't necessarily make it better, but it makes it easier.
Okay, so out of all of those things, the uncertainty of the market, the kind of the fact that we're doing these mini cycles uh, since 2020, AI is obviously a big question mark, and then mental health. So there's a lots of different things going on. I'm curious, first of all, about AI. Let's talk about AI because you can't have a podcast without talking about it. Out
The
of those,
algorithm loves it.
they do. The agencies, because this will be interesting, Carl, for those listening. The agencies that you've seen adopt it quickly and are the most curious, what are they doing differently? How have they started to adopt it, or how are they reframing it in their mind in that positive way? Just paint a bit of a picture about the positive ones to start with.
Yeah, they're like little kids. They're so excited. They're trying 4 new tools a week and they're jumping all over the place and they're making huge strides and huge failures, but they don't care. They're like, this is new, this is fun. It's putting magic back into what we do. And, we've lost the magic. When advertising agencies were there and they couldn't figure out the web and web shops showed up, web shops suddenly had magic again and could charge phenomenal rates. Thank you very much. And could do all kinds of things. But now the magic's kind of gone for digital agencies. Now with AI, it comes back. So I think the ones that are really doing well, they see this as the biggest opportunity they've had in a long time to add more value. The other thing to throw out there is I have never been a proponent of value-based pricing, right? Blair and Ince and I have
Really?
had some fun conversations,
Oh, I didn't know that.
but I think AI may finally make value-based pricing viable.
Tell me more about that.
So value-based pricing is a challenge because the industry hasn't accepted it as a norm. So if you are not being hired because somebody knows you and wants you, but you're in any kind of competitive situation, there's going to be a market price. It may fluctuate, it may be crazy, but defining value, we sent out to 200 agencies a survey at one point asking them to define value-based pricing. What is value-based pricing? These were all value-based shops. They came back. We could only cull it down to 17 definitions. If it's going to be that confusing for your end client, they're going to smell fear. They are not going to trust it. And they're going to, if it's not times and material, it may be fixed bid, whatever. But with AI, now we really do have to get time out of the equation as much as we can, because for me personally, when I write our newsletter, I have a private GPT. I've uploaded all of my personal writings that I think is my best in there. I tell it not to use anything else, and I can do my newsletter in about a third of the time now that I used to, but it's still me. I'm still the one who's in there and who's working, but the value of the newsletter's actually gone up because it's just better content now. It's just tighter ideas. And so I think that's it. Ultimately, we sell ideas. If those ideas get to the market faster, yes, I agree. You should pay more. I believe there's a value-based hour. Not everybody charges the same, right? There are lawyers who are charging $700 an hour, and there are lawyers who are charging $50 an hour. I think one is going to provide more value, right? Or have better outcomes. So I think this argument over tracking time or whatever, you track your time, you bill your value, but ultimately AI will make it so that you are buying a product, even if it is a service, because you know the results will be good, the results will carry you forward. I think this is it. I think at this point, we don't have to worry about the definition. Is it the value I bring to you and the amount of money you will save? Is it the value of my experience? Is it the value of competitors, like going down a different channel? So
And the value of you being able to judge the outputs that the AI has.
that's it. If you think about Gordon Ramsay, right?
Yeah.
You go back to Hell's Kitchen for a minute. Thank you for that export, by the way. He runs the pass. Think of AI as all the chefs. They're in the kitchen, they're cooking, they're doing all this. AI agents, this is a real thing. But it comes to the pass, and if you let something go straight from the kitchen to the table, there's going to be problems. And so, yeah, it is. Who is the head chef? Who is the person that instilled the initial idea and approved and refined it before it went out?
I love that. And as you say, Carl, the billable hour really is dead now, isn't it? I mean, Tim Williams. I mean, it depends. There's a
I think
place
it's
for
heading
it.
that way.
But we are going in that in that direction, don't you think?
I think we are. I think it's also, and Blair has said this, and he's the kinder, gentler Blair now. He's said that he does agree time and materials has its place. Its place is when there's tremendous risk. If the client doesn't really know what they want, and you try to value base a moving target, that's when time and materials makes a lot of sense. If you've done the same product or the same service you're doing for a client 1,000 times and you know exactly how to do it, my favorite example is Aaron Draplin, who is a logo designer. He will make the design at the table during the briefing. He will create the logo. They think he's taking notes. He's not. He's creating the damned logo. But he knows that people's minds can't handle that he did it at the table, like Picasso at that French cafe, right?
Yes.
So he puts it in a folder and he waits 2 weeks, and then he calls him and says, "Hey, I'm almost done. When can we have a meeting?"
Love
And
it.
then he puts on the finishing touches. He charges like $30,000 to $50,000 a logo because he's so popular. That's value. They're hiring him, right? But for any, like, if it's somebody on Fiverr, it's probably more of a time and materials. I'm going to play around a little bit. I'm going to go all over the place. So it's about mitigating risk. I think most projects should have both baked in.
To your point just there about this logo designer, Aaron Draplin,
Yeah.
you just said something quite key there. He's well known. Everyone's kind of vying to work with him. Do you
Yeah.
think personal branding is important for agency owners?
I think it is. I don't think it works for everyone. When I ran my shop, we were a cult of personality, right? I am loud. I am energetic. Even now, at my age, I still can't calm down, right? This is just the way I'm going to ride it out. I think there are other shops. Marty Ringline, when he had Include, and now he's at agree.com, he's over the top, bouncing off the walls. So these personalities were what people hired because if you look at it, we're a cookie cutter industry. Okay, hero graphic. Okay, call out. Okay, 3 infographics on our amazing process that's not exactly the same as everybody else's because we changed the names. So when you see all that, what are people really hiring if everything else shows up at the finish line at the same time? They're hiring culture. They're hiring people, right? So I think that really is important. But I also think there are some owners and some founders who just aren't that charismatic. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but they're really smart and they want to be heads down and working on stuff. They don't want to have to be the voice. You can find other voices in your company. It's risky. They could leave. But if you at least get out there, I think it's important. So yeah, I think right now it's really important. I think the way that the algorithms make everything vanilla is like kind of me, but I'm still doing it.
Okay, going back a step, we talked about the agency that's typically curious about AI. I want to talk about the people that you see, because you know so many agencies, that perhaps aren't curious about AI and they're maybe a little bit skeptical, maybe a little bit negative about it and aren't adopting it. Do you worry for those agencies?
What was the last part? Sorry.
Do you worry for those agencies?
Yes, a little bit. In order to move forward, we have to let go, right? I'm not the first person who said that for sure, but it's so true. And they're holding on to pre 2020. They're holding on to what was. They want to go back to what they had and how everything worked. And they don't want to be a technology company. And I think they fear that they're moving into that. your design focus shops and your dev focus shops and your search shops and ecom, they're all on board. It's some of your content shops, it's some of your public relations shops, it's some others that I would say their main product is relationship, and so they worry that the relationship is going to get hurt if they're not as completely personable as possible. And AI has that reputation. But even with them, I see them coming around now. I see them starting to put on presentations about AI and what they do. So I think they realize there's not really an option here except to buckle up, Buttercup, because here we go. And yeah, but I think it has been a hesitation. And, I hadn't thought about it before, but I think it's because their end product is less tech centric.
It's true, actually. And I've seen it myself, to be honest. What about the conversations? If we were a fly on the wall, Carl, to you having all of these conversations in the bureau, what do you think people would actually be surprised about if they were a fly on the wall listening to some of the conversations? And you're obviously hearing all the themes. You are the fountain of all knowledge about these conversations.
I think one thing everybody would be shocked about is how vulnerable owners make themselves when they're in front of other owners they know. And how many conversations start off, I don't know how to do this. Can somebody please tell me, have you done this? Do you know how? It could be a layoff. It could be a clause in a contract. It could be figuring out how to really determine utilization. But they make themselves vulnerable and they just say, I'm doing it wrong. Can somebody please help me do it right? It's the exact opposite of social media, right? Because on social media, we're sharing our outsides with other people who are comparing it to their insides. And that's why everybody feels bad, because it's like, I don't have a Lamborghini. Neither does that person. Come on. But then I think when you start to realize that you're in a safe place and you can really share these things, that's really it. Client management is huge, and trying to understand, we've got this client, this is their personality. I will say, we've I can't violate the bureau oath.
Okay.
So it's like, I promise not to share anything that a reasonable person would deem sensitive or confidential that you share during our time together. And so for that reason, I was going to share something and I can't. But I'll just say that we have a lot of women leaders. And, this is what they've told me, that notoriously, when they get into these online communities, a lot of the women aren't really trying to improve. They aren't really trying to navigate through a male-dominated industry, right, and world. But in their group, they're making suggestions on how to get by things, on how to not sacrifice yourself or your own beliefs, but advance your cause with people who may not be able to see it the way you're trying to share it, or manage your client who had said something really inappropriate. Here's how you need to respond. I think in any community, there's sub-communities. Any healthy community, once you get to a size, and I think we've passed that size, it breaks into smaller communities. And that's when you have to scale intimacy, because once you get into that small group, then you can share the real, like what you're actually going through. And I think that's just a huge part of what's made me so addicted to building this thing.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I absolutely agree with you about this vulnerability piece, because, many agency owners come to me and say, I don't know how to do this, or I want a benchmark for doing this. So, and the more vulnerable you are, I think the more value you do get from a peer group. You talked about mental health earlier on, and I suppose, from what you're saying, talking to each other, being vulnerable does help. I mean, have you ever seen a huge turnaround of someone coming to the bureau when the chips were down, things weren't going well at all, and then they got the support and the guidance, and then went back to their agency, and things turned around for them.
Yeah, it sounds a little cocky to say, but a lot. I think my favorite, and again, I can't share the individual, but this person showed up at one of our events probably a decade ago and sat down, and it was 30 of us in the room, and we were going around during introductions, and they broke down. And they said, I spent the last money that we had to come here. And they had a team of about 12. They had been really successful, and then they had made some investments in certain technologies that didn't pay out. And they ended up in some trouble. And so at the time, I wasn't part of the leadership at the Bureau. I was just an attendee at that event. And I made a note to go talk to this person and just say, hey, this game only ends when you quit playing. When you're a small shop, you can make it through stuff. And when I went to find them and talk to them, there were two other people already talking to them. So I looked over, and he like motioned me over, and we spent probably an hour and a half to 2 hours going through their actual finances as a collective. We went through what they were offering. We went through how to change things. And they went back, and they had some like off the wall ideas that we got excited about, but they never had the confidence to try. And then they did. And it went really well. And a few years later, actually exited, right? In a very positive manner. I don't know the details, but that was a seminal moment in that turn. And it was because somebody told them, that idea sounds ridiculous, and I would totally try it. I think that's amazing. They would have just sat there wallowing that they weren't good enough instead of feeling like they had people that were, holding them up. And I see that a lot.
I think that's such a good point, because it's not just about the guidance you receive, because you had an excellent lineup of speakers, like top.
Thank you.
I mean, I know I spoke, but I'm not saying me, but I was scribbling so many notes. We had one about leadership, and everyone was standing on their feet, and it was just so electric. But it's not just the guidance; it's the reassurance that you're on the right path as well, isn't it? To keep
Yeah.
going. That's going to give you the confidence to actually make a change or something. So that I'm glad you brought that up. Do you think, Carl, we've talked a lot about how, it's challenging running an agency. It's not a walk in the park. It kind of attracts the person that loves the challenge of it. Do you think that the business model itself is fit for purpose? I mean, we've touched on it with the AI and how that's affecting the billable hour, but what are you standing back from it and reassessing it? Do you think it needs a big overhaul?
I think it's changing. I think it's going to continue to change. I mentioned recently in a few places that agency owners seem to be aging out. We don't have many Gen Z owners. We have about 20 in the Bureau, and that's 20 out of about 800. So when you start looking at it, you go, where are they? What are they doing? Yeah, some of them are content creators, right? Some of them have that personal brand. They're starting with the personal brand before they even have the experience. So that kind of makes you look twice, right? Said the old guy yelling from the porch. But then some are building and sharing and building and sharing, but they don't want to get bigger. We were in Montreal at a local meetup, and these three guys came in, and they all looked to me like babies. I mean, they were like in their late teens, early 20s, and they were there. And this was a meetup where we were just sharing what was working, what wasn't. And I asked them, I was like, well, tell me what y'all do. And they were a brand influencer. So you think about influencers, right? My daughter actually is an influencer. You think about what they do. They're just like, micro celebrities in that way. These guys were doing that for brands. They were making brands a celebrity, right? They never would have been on our radar because they don't see themselves as an agency. They see themselves as creators. So I think we've got terminology issues. I think we got a lot of things like that. But ultimately, I think with this new wave, and we're going to do a panel on this. I've asked some of these Gen Z and older millennials if they'd be willing to share, like why they started their shop, what they're thinking now. The conversations I've had, they don't want anything big. They want flexibility over financial success. And it very much gets to kind of like, I think Tim Ferriss is a little bit of a tool, but it does get to that idea of living your life while you're alive, not saving money now to live later. They want it. They get it. They're fine with being minimalists. They still like nice things, but they aren't defined by them. And so that to me is where this next wave is going. I think agencies are going to get smaller. I think we'll still have our monolithic, motherships that are out there, but I think we'll partner together more. I think we'll see that, there's a specialist agency just on this and a specialist agency just on that and a specialist. And then for this client, 3 of these specialists need to come together. I actually think that's where account management's going too.
Tell me more.
It's relationship management. Most account managers are empathetic. They are charismatic. They do understand how to support a client in a manner that may bring in more work. We won't call it manipulate. We will call it strategic support. But I think they're going to be responsible for managing these partnerships too. I think when you start to see that the world is getting smaller in terms of the units of business, we do have more entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, studios. I think somebody's going to have to manage these partnership relationships. And to me, account managers make the perfect people to do it because they're always throwing something over the transom. They're always looking for what's coming. And if they're working with other people like themselves at other specialist agencies, then this just becomes more and more valuable, more powerful, right?
Very interesting. So going back to the creators. So, I mean, I know this is hard. We haven't got a crystal ball. So they're getting smaller. The agencies are getting smaller. They're not calling themselves agencies. They're starting through the creator route, then kind of thinking, well, I don't really want to go big. Plus, they've got the AI tools that are allowing them to leverage
They're
their
AI first,
work.
yep.
AI first. So the shape of an agency is going to change, but the skill set, you think it's still that account management skill set that's needed to. So what would the? Do you have any thoughts? I know we're always going to have the big publicists and the Havas and the groups and the networks, but if these smaller shops, what would that typically comprise?
I think you're going to have one kind of subject matter expert on a topic. Let's say fundraising. I'm a fundraising specialist agency. And then I will have like probably some AI agents who are helping me with all of my different communications and things like that I have to do. I'll have a couple of humans that I work with who help me with the AI agents, right? And probably somebody who's a relationship manager who's trying to see things above the logistics and more into the other people. Because ultimately, that's what's going to win. Humans are still going to want to work with humans. Well, most of us will. I'm a little questionable on some humans, but we're going to want to keep working with humans. So that'll be a core part is having people who are strategic and empathetic and creative. But I mean, I know a shop right now that's search focused, and they're 3 people, and they are doing the work of some of these like 100-person, 200-person shops. Not the quantity, but the quality. And so that I think becomes the other part is like, who's going to win? Who can create the most quality? Who can create the most value? It's not about who's got the biggest name and the biggest reputation. Another example of that is imaginative. So it's like imaginative, but without the I. And Chris McKay and Richard Banfield started this magazine, online magazine, right? It is written by AI agents who go out, find the information, bring it back to Chris. Chris is the editor, right? He's at the pass. He's Gordon Ramsay. He is reviewing. He is, removing any hallucinations. He is saying, this makes a lot of sense. This doesn't feel quite right. And they're putting it out there. And in the competition for people advertising with AI, they're demanding rates on par with the Wall Street Journal.
Wow.
They're 2 years old.
Wow.
So I think that becomes it, the flexibility. But yeah, I think it's like a core creator, a support person, a relationship person, and a lot of AI, I think is where it's going to go.
Love this. So for those account managers listening to this, that relationship manager role, what are the key skills that they should be honing and developing now in order to put themselves in the best position to become the most valuable?
Yeah, I'm going to lead with empathy. And people say you can't learn empathy. My brother has. It took him a long time, right? So I think just having anything you can do to raise your EQ, right, which is one of my favorite little alphabet soups. I think being strategic, like being business focused, really giving advice to clients and partners that they would not have gotten and not expecting a return for that, like truly giving without expecting to receive. I think they're going to have to be creative, right? It's not just about making sure that your client is happy. It's not just about making sure that the thing was delivered on time and you're supporting project management. It's not any of that. To me, it's about excitement and creativity, and how can you become that moment of joy in a client's week where they're like, that was really cool. I want to share it with other people. Because that's when you start to really expand out what your company can do, because you've got an advocate at a client who's going to start going. So empathy, strategy, and I would say creativity.
I'm so glad you said that bit about you're going to be the best part of their day. What can you show them or tell them about that's they're going to say, wow, that's cool. It's being that kind of futurist. And Carl, it's getting easier for us to do that with the AI tools. I'm putting together some videos at the moment for my tribe, and how to leverage AI tools to get these insights and to get this data so much quicker than we've ever done. So I'm super excited about that, and thank you so much for talking about it, because I think this is actually very exciting. Now, talking about leadership, one of your key messages is around connection and reducing the isolation of agency leaders. How does this peer group sort of support their decision making and their business growth ultimately?
Yeah, so one of the things I love about the Bureau is that anyone who's a member can start their own club. We call them clubs, but they're really communities, right? Our women's group, which was the Bad Bitches and is now the BBs, they've rebranded.
Love that.
120 women in there, right? We've got a gardening club that just started. So like a week ago, somebody said, hey, it's almost seasoned. Is anybody here into gardening? And now there are like 30 people in this one channel, right? That are like going through and doing that. I've totally forgotten the question.
No, it's exactly this. It's like how does this connection, how does membership of the Bureau allow them to feel supported? And I didn't know this. The Bad Bitches, I
Yeah.
love the sound of that. That is so cool.
And it was the number one selling shirt in the store. They did this amazing Starsky and Hutch 70s style logo.
Brilliant.
But so I think also, they have peer calls. So monthly you have a peer call with people you don't really know, but you can trust. So you're able to share a whole lot. Like you'll know some of them because they've been there before, but it ebbs and flows as who's in there. Serendipity lunches, so showing up with 30 owners and getting thrown in with a couple for an hour just to talk about whatever. I like to say that, I think SODA is great. Society of Digital Agencies. Tom Beck runs that. Amazing, right? We're different beasts, but we're like brothers. And so I see them as classical music. Very well orchestrated, right? They are going to have this presentation and you are going to learn, and the take home notes are already ready and they've thought of everything. We're more like jazz. We're just going to riff off each other. We're going to say, we should have an event on that. Let's do it tomorrow. And we're just going to make stuff happen, and we're going to move at a fast pace. And I mean, that's the way the world is, right? So the one thing I will say that is a problem is sometimes somebody's out for a week and they come back and they're like, what happened? Like I took my eyes off for a second. But I think that's the other part is everyone in the community can make a difference. We are member led. If you want to put on a webinar, just let us know and you're going to do it, right? And we're going to support it. If you want to talk to a certain person and you don't know them, I'm going to introduce you to them. You know, these are the things that I think just keep the energy and the hope and the positivity alive through making these connections and keeping people rolling. Yeah.
I love that jazz reference, and you're right. I hosted a round table event recently in London for a group of agency owners. Everyone left that lunch with a page full of notes. The information sharing, and like you said, it was very spontaneous. I want to talk to you about, because I'm just conscious of your time. You've obviously run your own agency, Carl. You're surrounded by agency people. You know the agency model very well. If you were starting from scratch right now,
Right.
what the hell would you do?
I'll tell you what I wouldn't do to start. I wouldn't marry a certain technology. I wouldn't say we are this shop. We are a Shopify shop. I wouldn't say we're an AI shop. I wouldn't say anything like that. I would build one of these brand influencer agencies is what I think I would do, because the key is how you can move a client forward, not what tools you use to do it. In my humble opinion, I think it's more important to say, we broke you out of vanilla. We made you obvious, right? And now people are seeing you. And if you can do that, I think it's also a little industry, it's not industry specific, right? So you can say what we're great at is taking a good, healthy company and letting people know it exists. We will get you exposure. We will get you out there. I think Marty Ringline at Degree, he has one of the best models I've ever seen. And he's done this again and again and again. He had a company called Invite. He contacted Eventbrite 2 years before and said, hey, you're going to want to buy me. We can talk now or we can talk later. I'm building a company that fixes all the things you can't get right. They acquired him 2 years later, right? He's right now taking on DocuSign. So
Yes, I had dinner with him.
yeah, so
He had
Marty,
the whole, yeah.
it's amazing, right? He just does this. And I think you may be uncomfortable with that attitude or that approach or punching up or whatever you want to call it. But I think that is the future, is an agency has to be able to give a client a real personality, right? I mean, I think Apple's kind of lost their way a little bit, and you see these bigs that can't quite figure it out. But I think with an agency, that's what I would focus on. I would want to just be the most creative, strategic chaos on the planet, and just throw them out there. It's kind of what we used to do, but I think we didn't really understand what we did back then. Now I look at it and I'm like, that was why people liked us, because we gave them visibility they never had.
You said industry agnostic, so you
Yeah.
wouldn't specialize in an industry.
It's interesting. I may find that I did, but I don't think I would set out to do it on purpose. So we had clients like Facebook and Epic Games and Marriott and like these huge brands that are fun to say, right? Hated working with them. It was brutal. There were so many guidelines. Everybody already knew who they were. I mean, it was just fun to put the logo on the site and go, look at us, what we did. I would rather work with an up-and-comer. I would rather work with the strongest number 2 in the market. I would rather see that person who's hungry to win. And that was a big part of what we did too. We call them checklist clients versus must-win clients. A checklist client was told to have these 6 things done in a week and they're going to pay you this amount of money. A must-win client, doesn't go dark. And in fact, sometimes you ask them, could you please give us a moment? Right? Because they're so eager. They have to win. And I would focus on that too. I wouldn't look for a certain type of budget or output or industry. I would look for a founder or an owner who I can work with who has to win. That's like, we're going in, let's go.
So agencies are not going anywhere. They're just changing shape. The
Once
business
again.
model is changing. Once again, yeah, it's never ending.
Yep.
Final question.
Yes, ma'am.
What final pieces of advice would you give for an agency to an agency owner that's listening to this and maybe is a bit fearful and worried about the uncertainty in the market, that is maybe suffering a bit mental health because they've put everything into the last couple of years and things aren't working? What's a few words of wisdom you can share with them, because you've seen this so much?
I think I would share with them what I share with myself every morning over coffee. The world's probably not going to blow up today. And it's probably not going to blow up tomorrow. So let's just see what we can do. You know? Go for a walk. Close your laptop. You don't have to fix this right now. It's important, yeah. But you know what's more important? You feeling good. You showing up with an attitude and a clear mind is going to be much more valuable than just throwing a whole bunch of hours at something while you're cranky. So take care of yourself. Be curious and find your people.
Love that. Love that. So, final question for those listening that would like to join the Bureau or would like to have a chat with you about joining the Bureau. What's the best way to reach you and where should they go?
Yeah, I would say if you want to reach me, go to LinkedIn and you can just search Carl Smith Bureau and I'm sure I'll pop up. There's only a handful of Carl Smiths on there. And in terms of the Bureau, I mean, just bureauofdigital.com. We are rebranding to just the Bureau. It's going to be quite the process. But the reason is this is about humans. It's not about the output. If it's paper, if it's digital, if it's ethereal, whatever it is, it's made by humans and we need to be together.
Carl, thank you so much for joining me. This has been brilliant.
Oh, thank you, Jenny.